Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good lunchtime. Midday in the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, and it's a Giro bonus day for you all. Just 41 minutes of racing gone so far. A break has gone. 148 kilometres remain, and today is the first big day in the Giro d'Italia. The first important climbs of this Giro. We're off to Marco Pantani land today. First of the three big days that remembers the legend of Italian cycling, who sadly passed away 10 years ago. Cipo di Cardegna, a short, sharp climb, 10% ramps, and then a last climb to Montecopiolo today, one of those where the gradient changes quite a lot. This is the Apennine stage. This is the first big day for the GC boys in the Giro, at least on paper anyway. Good news is the sun is out, no rain is forecast, and we're seeing Tom de Gent on our way into Montecopiolo. So break has just gone, it's just being established. We're still getting the scene of exactly who's in it. This is it at the moment. Average race speed so far after 45 minutes is 44 kilometres per hour. Sean Kelly is alongside me. Sean, today very much a different day, one where we expect the GC boys to get involved, and hence there's been a big fight to get in this break.
Yes, well, we have probably two races within the one race here. The guys who want to get into the breakaway. It's going to be a special one. Is Ulrike Greenedge really going to control here? Have the confidence in Michael Matthews to hold on to race leader, pink jersey? And the teams are thinking of that. If we get into a nice breakaway with guys who are not dangerous in general classification, we could get a very big advantage and maybe go all the way to the finish. We see yesterday it got so close of the break succeeding, but we think today that the break might succeed. So that is the first thing the teams directly will be saying, okay guys, into the breakaway, and we'll see what happens from there. But it's certainly a change. It's going to be a day where we will see more of who can win this race outright at the end.
Well, it is certainly a day where you can lose the Giro d'Italia, if not just win it on this one stage. Lots of high mountains to come. These are the first big climbs, and as you can see, Sean, the break has already been allowed to go. This is people stopping for a natural break, having a bit of early lunch and just relaxing a little. It would be a good scenario for Cadel Evans today, wouldn't it? If certainly somebody could go ahead, take the pink jersey away, maybe a little early from him. And of course, if it was somebody that wasn't a threat overall, it'd be a very good day for him.
Yes, it would be the perfect scenario, but in bike racing, yes, you have to just wait and see what's going to happen. And I presume if it comes down to the end and he can maybe allow somebody else to take the race leadership, take control of the race, because Cadel Evans, you know, he is very much in the race right from the start. He's been with his team there on the front on the earliest stages, and they're controlling things well, and he is looking like a guy who is going to go on and contest the overall victory in this race. But we have to see in the mountains, and today is the first day where we'll see a little bit more of a difficulty for the riders, the general classification men. If we see anybody in difficulty today from general classification, well, then it's not a good signal at all.
That's the break. Bandiera in the break again. Finetto is there. Kemener. Edvard Boasson Hagen. Happy birthday to him, and happy Norway Day as well. It is the national day of the national constitution of Norway. And of course, say a happy Norway Day to our friends in Norway when they join us, along with the rest of Europe on Eurosport International. You're watching exclusively on British Eurosport at the moment. Our friends due to join us in about an hour, so you'll forgive us, I'm sure, if we recap yesterday's stage then. Talk a little bit more about what we expect to happen today. This is a special hour just for you in the UK and Ireland. Interesting break then. Finetto in there. And Sean, it's good to see Stefano Pirazzi in there, because he was one of the guys that took a real bang the other day. And we hope that he's recovering enough to have a real go at doing what he does best, going for those climbing points and lighting up the race.
Yes, well, he's the one who we talked about in the last number of days. Was he playing the waiting game? Unfortunately, 2 days ago he was down on that crash and did suffer a lot on the final climb. And yesterday finished a long way down as well. He finished 5:26 down yesterday, so I was getting a bit concerned there. Is he really kind of bad injury? But to see him up there today, it's a good indicator he's back where he normally would be on a stage like today.
Australians having a chat. Michael Matthews on the left in pink. Cadel Evans. If, as we expect, the rest of the general classification contenders to really attack things today, he will be the favourite to go into pink. He's just 21 seconds back behind Michael Matthews. And it's interesting, you were wondering, Sean, if Ulrike Greenedge were actually going to ride for him today. He actually came to the start today and said, Michael Matthews, I have no chance of staying in pink. It is not my day. So the suggestion is they're not even going to bother trying.
Well, and that is for the breakaway, as I say, that's what they're hoping, that there will be a little bit of confusion back in the bunch. Who's going to take up the chase now? Will Cadel Evans, take control of the race? And sometimes when you get to a stage like today, you have a race leader who feels that he hasn't a chance of holding on. Well, then his team is not going to ride normally as much as you would expect with a rider who is in a solid position of holding on here today. And then who takes on the responsibility of the race? Will BMC, Cadel Evans, take on the race, or will he say, well, there's a lot of other favourites as well, they have other teams have to ride? And we can see this Breakaway is pulling out very quickly, and we'll get a list now of the riders who are up there, the general classification men. Is there anybody up there who could maybe come back into the situation? Because of all the crashes we've had, we have riders who are quite a long ways down who normally would be up there in the top 10 or 15 in general classification, but because of the lot of crashes we've had, they've went further down in the GC.
Slow, almost leisurely pace for those behind at the minute. They're just letting things go, letting the advantage go. And again, we're just waiting to see who's going to take control of the race at the minute. Michael Matthews in pink, just having a chat with those from Movistar. Who's going to ride? Are we going to ride? Not too sure in the end. Translations as well, which is interesting. You can see having a chat there with Fran Ventosa, who looks to be the man in charge as far as the road captain duties are concerned for the Movistar team. Movistar, of course, have the big pre-race favourite, Nairo Quintana. He came today saying he's not feeling too good still, and he came with a little bit of criticism for Cadel Evans, saying that perhaps Evans attacking the other day wasn't the best thing to do, to set an example to the youngsters like myself who are just starting. Winning isn't everything, he said. Again, Michele Scarponi, the other man, to have a little dig at Cadel Evans. But as we said yesterday, Sean, most of Evans' rivals in the main have actually backed up what Evans did and said, well, if it was I or our team, we would have done the same.
Well, I think that's what we said immediately on air when the questions were thrown out. Should they have waited? I don't think there was no way. The race was on. It has been on for a long time, and Cadel Evans was in control with his team on the front, and you continue on that situation. I think there's some riders saying that, well, he shouldn't have really pushed on as much, but I don't agree. I think you're into the race, and you just at that point you have to continue on with it.
Continue on to Montecopiolo. These are the images from the finish line, and it is a beautiful image as well. Right smack bang in the middle of the Italian peninsula, rather. We get the words out in the end. This is the Apennine region. Montecopiolo on the border of Tuscany, Emilia-Romagna, where, of course, Marco Pantani comes from. Marco Pantani used to train on one of the big climbs we take on today. Three classified climbs, the first category climbs of this Giro d'Italia. This is a rare thing we get to see on television here, Sean. 142 kilometres to go, and we're seeing the politicking that goes on between the peloton, who rides. We've seen riders translating those English and Spanish speakers in Movistar, getting Michael Matthews' English words translated to Fran Ventosa, who's obviously the captain on the road for Movistar but doesn't speak English, and he's then radioing back to the car. It's a funny little position to be in, isn't it?
Yes, and it's great to see that. We've missed maybe a little bit of the aggressive race and the breakaway, getting away, but we can see here that it is a discussion on the front of the bunch, and we just see a moment ago of great pictures with Michael Matthews and the team from the other favourites all having a discussion here, and who's going to do the chasing. At the moment, nobody wants to take it up, and this could be an interesting one because the breakaway in the meantime are riding very strong up front and pulling out more and more of a time advantage.
Well, Dario Cataldo comes to the front, as does Michele Scarponi on the left-hand side. In the meantime, the red jersey of Nasser Bouhanni just stretching his legs. There's not too much interesting for him to ride for today, certainly given the fact that up the road we have a big group and a big break, so no real intermediate sprint points to be played out for him behind either. Just a wave to those at home. This is what he did yesterday in the meantime, and it really was a gutsy, very, very gutsy sprint from him, wasn't it, Sean? Coming through that very small gap just around the corner, taking on Giant, who were perfectly positioned with Luca Mezgec. A real good win for him.
Yes, a really good win, and I think the way it went in that final couple of 100 metres yesterday, before that final curve to the right, it slowed up a bit. It wasn't a real full-out sprint, and I did mention on our commentary yesterday we could see Bohani there. He was pushing with one of the riders from Giant Shimano. I thought it was Mezgec, but I think it was another rider trying to take the wheel of Mezgec, not allowing Bohani to be in that position, and of course with that final corner. And I think they know with Bohani, you know, if you take him into the sprint in a good position, he's probably the fastest man. They realise that, but he wasn't having any of it. He was putting the elbows out there and pushing to get the wheel of Mezgec. He knew if he left a teammate between, he would probably leave a gap in the final corner, so he was aware, and the tactic he had read it. He had read it well beforehand.
Front of the race, Julian Arredondo. Well, normally the man on the left-hand side, the minute Columbian but the very strong climber in the black there, would not be allowed to go in a break because he was, let's say, in between the first top 10 candidates to win this Giro d'Italia. He, however, was caught up in that big crash the other day, and he was the biggest loser out of the big favourites to actually be able to stay in the race. He lost 18 minutes on that stage. He's 19.50 behind, Sean, and that gives a reason as to why he's been allowed to go out in the break.
Yes, unfortunately, he's a long ways out, and I think if he was maybe at 10 minutes, 8 minutes, he might be allowed to go also. But unfortunately, he's so far out now to make up that time. But we'll have to wait and see. But it's very highly unlikely that they'll be allowed that huge advantage where he can come back into the general classification. And as we can see, the peloton is starting to roll and things are getting a little bit more organised here, I think.
Well, Alessandro Petacchi there coming back up to the peloton as well. Just as we saw the heads of the bunch discussing things early on in the week when we went to Bari. Alessandro Petacchi, Scarponi and the rest of them doing their work and having a chat at the front. On our way to Montecopiolo today on the Giro d'Italia. You're watching on British Eurosport exclusively live. Join us again after the break. Sean and I back with more. Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome along to the Giro d'Italia. 137 kilometres to go. With 10 men in the break now. They're getting a very good advantage. Pushing on 9 minutes. We've one man trying to join the break. That is Adam Hansen. All those consecutive Grand Tours as we look down at Gualdo Tardino. On our way through the centre of Italy today. Hansen has got about a minute and a half on the peloton, but it's a big ask to make that break. 10 very strong riders there. Good candidates for victory if they get out ahead, and this is a situation, given the fact that there's no real danger in that break out there. Looking down the list, only Mauro Finetto at 3:28 could take the jersey, but of course with that team from Neri Sottoli already being a couple of men down, not being the strongest rider in the world, Finetto, I think BMC will be pretty happy to let him just take the jersey by a few seconds today. There's a lot of people pushing on though. There's a real question as to who was going to ride on the front. Movistar, one of those teams being asked to do the riding. Nairo Quintana looks to be calling everybody's bluff at the minute. They haven't really committed men there. You can see 8 minutes 30 the latest gap. Hansen a minute and 30 back. Sean, Adam Hansen there for Lotto. It's a big tough ask for him to make it, isn't it?
Yes, it is a big one. Difficult to see him make them there, because up front, they're going to continue on riding now, and they're pushing on quite well. Everybody contributing here on your own. If he doesn't make it in the next 5 kilometres, I think we will see that advantage growing out instead of coming down for him. Unfortunately, he just got out of the peloton just a bit too late. The advantage was too much when he made the move.
Bit of a shame for Lotto, in the fact they're not really looking too strong overall. Maxime Montfort and Tim Wellens still within 3 minutes. Wellens at 1:52, Montfort at 2:48. Big day for Mauro Finetto though. 3 minutes and 28 seconds. Sean, if this break does get to the finish, this is the man who's likely, if they get any sort of decent advantage, to have a chance of going into the pink jersey.
Yes, well, it's going to be a long day. It's a difficult day. So when you look at the men up front here, it's Finetto is the man. 3:28. He's in a real good position. Apart from that, there's nobody really of any danger. So, but will they be allowed to pull out this big advantage, and not surprising, like they have over 8 minutes. We did see they almost come to a standstill back in the peloton when the discussion was going on. We could see Michael Matthews there. He was being spoken to by a lot of riders. Are you going to ride? And of course, he did say that today was going to be a day where it was going to be very, very difficult to do anything for race leadership. But again, they always expect the team of race leaders to control the race, even though if he's not that type of rider where he can defend his jersey, they do accept it. And it looks like that Ulrika Greenwich are not contributing at all for the moment.
Ulrika Greenwich not riding then. Nairo Quintana, Cadel Evans, Rigoberto Uran, it's all about them today. Interesting that Uran had put a man right on the front of the peloton there. Megaform, a quick step. We saw Petacchi coming to the front to say that he would be one to go and ride. Now, Yonder Godoy would be a man we'd have expected to try and be in the break for Androni Giocattoli today. Before this Giro d'Italia, he said that he would be wanting to try and have a go at taking the King of the Mountains jersey. In that King of the Mountains jersey at the minute is Martin Cialinghi. Another thing to factor in here, Sean, is that if this break stays away today, we've 2 first category climbs, 1 second category climb. With all the points available, then there's a real likelihood, if everybody gets organised and there's an agreement within the break, that we could have a new King of the Mountain by the end of the day as well.
Yes, and the man we spoke about, Pirazzi, of course, he won the mountain classification last year, and he won it in this week at getting into breakaways. And until now, of course, the minor points were available, but you have to make such an effort to get out there, to get any points at all. And we've seen the breakaways, long days there, and you will pay for that effort when you come into the more difficult days. And Pirazzi, he was definitely, keeping his powder dry, and we see him here. He's out there today, and that the objective is to go and try and get maximum mountain classification points, and he is going to be a challenger, and it looks like that's recovered quite well from his accident 2 days ago.
179 kilometres in total today, an hour of racing gone. We're likely to get an update on the speed in just a few minutes' time. It's been a very fast first hour. After 45 minutes or so, we had almost 45 kilometres per hour racing done by the Breakaway up front. As Sean said, we saw some rather peculiar images that we don't often get to see on the television, of a lot of riders having a chat, almost getting off their bikes and doing so, shaking hands and drumming out a peace accord. In the end, finally they've started to ride, and there's a bit of a rhythm being put on behind. There's Dario Cataldo, one man hoping to do well for Sky. Cataldo's still at 2:36 and very much in the Giro d'Italia, especially with time trials coming up. He's putting a rhythm himself right in the front of the peloton. Here is that first hour average rate speed then, 43.457 kilometres per hour. Nasser Bouhanni close to the front as well for Française des Jeux. BMC deciding not to ride. They're pretty happy with the situation at the moment. I think they will be very happy to limit their losses in terms of bonus seconds, wouldn't they, out in front? Given the fact that today's climbs, Sean, are a lot harder. They're not exactly Cadel Evans tailor-made climbs. They're much more, certainly the first climb you have to go up, which is sections at 10%, very narrow roads, much more made for the likes of Quintana and Uran, aren't they?
Yes, they are going to be difficult today. It's hard to see who exactly is in great shape, because we haven't had the test yet, and this is the first one where we have first category climbs and quite a steep gradient as well. Evans, he is going to be in difficulty to stay with the real climbers like Quintana, but how good is Quintana? We heard about he have a problem with his hip after the fall. Will that be a handicap to him? The weather conditions as well, it's not the Quintana weather. He would like just 30 degrees sunshine every day, and that's when he's at his best and he's most dangerous. So there's a number of things in there we have to take into consideration. How good is Quintana? Will he be able to create a difference today? But Evans is the one who is looking very impressive, but we haven't had a real test at all, and today I think we will see some of the questions answered in that respect.
A lot of questions to be asked. We are waiting for those answers. One answer straight away from the peloton is that the pace really has been upped very, very quickly indeed. Look how strung out it is. And again, perhaps, Sean, an immediate realisation that they let it go for a little long already. Remember the Breakaway, yes, they've got a good advantage, and it's still early in the stage, so they've got plenty of energy to expend. Don't often see it this strung out in the peloton so early, do you?
Well, it's a special one because, and this is a situation we have here, as we mentioned, with the race leader we've got. Ulrika Greenedge not controlling it today, as they have been doing right from the start of this race, and then it comes to a situation, well, who's going to do the chasing? And at the moment we see there's a few teams who have got to the front there. Omega Pharma Quickstep taking it up, as I said. I think there's a BMC rider also there at the front, so there's a few teams with just, you know, men up front and pushing the pace along, and as we can see, it is pushing out the peloton, and they had to get a bit of urgency because, like, the break went 8 minutes in a matter of kilometres, and now they have to try and, you know, stabilise that, take it back, or hold it at that for the moment, certainly. And you know, it's going to be a long day working on the front for some of those domestics.
A lot of work to come. Those vitamin D reserve can be replenished, though, thankfully today. Sunshine and a very, very pleasant temperature, around 20 degrees. A little cool, obviously, once we get to the finish, well above 1,000 metres. Montecopiolo, special place. Lots of Giro history. We'll tell you about it as the afternoon goes on. Osteria del Gatto is where we're heading through at the moment. There's Jay McCarthy working on the front. Tinkoff Saxo have an interest today for Rafał Majka, and it was interesting to hear overnight that Nicholas Roach was saying that his task now immediately changes, and he will be a very good, hard-working domestique for the man who's currently wearing the white jersey for the best young rider, well, looking after it for Michael Matthews, Rafał Majka. Well, what sort of attitude is there in a team, Sean, when your plans change immediately and you've suddenly got a new leader?
Well, it's a different situation for Roach. Normally he would be the one who would be, you know, defending for himself up there with Rafał Majka. Now losing so much time with the crash, it's going to be an interesting one. I think, you know, to be at the service of Majka so early is a risky one, although he has proven last year that, you know, he's a solid rider, and he really was fighting big time for the young jersey classification. We see him getting into some big battles on the mountaintop finishes. I'm surprised a bit that maybe Roach is not allowed, or he doesn't have the agreement from the team to go on the breakaways, because a one like today, that's where Roach can, you know, do well. He could get a stage victory, and late in the race, if Mike is in a really good position, then in the final week you could, you know, put Roach to his services. But for Tinkoff Saxo to be doing that already, as we've been hearing a bit, it's surprising.
Well, Nico Roach did say that he would be hoping to get that liberty to go out for a stage win and obviously get out in the breakaways, but at the moment, as we've seen from the evidence today, it took a while for that break to go. There were chances to get in the break, I think, for most riders. Certainly we've seen with the likes of Arredondo being allowed to go if you have the time difference. There wasn't really going to be any problem with Nico Roach going, given the fact that he's 15 minutes and 55 seconds down, but he didn't try to get in there. Sky now in formation. They do have a man in the break. Dario Cataldo there. Movistar not represented, but they do have Nairo Quintana, of course, to think about. 2 minutes and 8 seconds. 130.6 kilometres to go. You're watching Eurosport Cycling. Keep your messages coming in on Twitter. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling. In the meantime, we're off for a break. Thanks for all your questions and comments on Twitter, everybody. You're watching exclusively here on British Eurosport Giro d'Italia Stage 8. Remember, messages to hashtag Eurosport Cycling. Let's get everybody sitting down, watching the cycling today, and get that topic trending. At Rob Hatch TV for questions to us here in the box as well. We've already had one. David O'Connell talking about Nicholas Roach, who we had a brief chat about before the break, Sean. He was saying, what do you make of Nico waiting 15 minutes for the bike? Well, actually, Nicholas Roach said that it took him so long to get up that he was actually stunned to have fallen. It wasn't a case of him having to wait for the bike. It was Majka who was up quickly on a teammate's bike. I think it was actually Jay McCarthy who gave him his bike. Nicholas Roach said he was very stunned. It took him a while to get off the ground, and hence the reason for him losing a lot of time. It's all sorts of confusion that's taken 2 or 3 days to really clear up, Sean. It was such a big incident.
Yes, well, it was a huge one, and when you go down like that, of course, yeah, you have to get a bike, and we could see the confusion there, even for the ambulance and everything to get through. It was a major problem, because all the cars and all the Rector Sporties want to get a good position to go on to the final climb. Although you have your number in the cavalcade, they do try and move up a bit, and it's not something new where a rider puts up his hand and he calls the car just before you come onto the climb. That's more so maybe in the classics, like in the Tour of Flanders, where you're getting to very important points. But it does happen in some of the stage races as well. But you can imagine behind, with the big crash, the cars were, all over the road. The thing was totally blocked. So for the mechanics to get up, and if you're a good way down the cavalcade, it's a long way up there to get to the riders. And teams with riders, it depends who they find first on the road or who's first there with a broken bike. So then he's the one first to be serviced. And if you get a big bash off the road as well, sometimes you're very sore, you're concerned you have something broken. And we did see some of the riders lying there for a while. It's just a smack off the road, the shock of it, and you can lose a bit more time than you normally should. So you could lose 2 or 3, 4 minutes there very quickly. And then when you get going, you're so sore, you start to lose morale a bit, and you don't really have the morale anymore to push on. And I think you lose with the crash, but you also lose it on the final climb, because the general classification, you're 4 or 5 minutes down already, it's game over.
Italy turning pink yet again. Be lots of bandanas and shaved heads and goatee beards at the finish line and on the climbs today. Homage paid to Marco Pantani, passed away 10 years ago now. His riding style is missed by many, certainly the Italian supporters. But with so many men having lost 2 or 3 minutes, a bit of time on this Giro d'Italia, that accident that Sean was talking about a moment ago, we might have to see some of that attacking style back in the next few days.
Well, I think there's some riders who will have to go on the attack, which normally, we might not see that, because they would be there in the general classification. And, I think we have some of that today. You see Bosenhagen, he was very much up in the general classification. The crash took him totally out of the general, so he's in that breakaway today. Because I think the way he was riding, we see the first day with the mountaintop finish, he was very much up there until the final couple of 100 metres. He did struggle, and he was slipped a long way back in that leading group of about 25 to 30 riders. Then the crash, he was 35 seconds down roughly, I think, and now he's 20 minutes 25 seconds down. So he is one of the ones who is going to go out in the break, and we're going to see many more of them. Nicholas Roach, another example I think we should see. And when you look down through the classroom, the guys who've lost a lot of time, like those two guys, they're going to try and go and get some glory, have a go for a stage victory.
Stage victory is the possibility for these riders in the break. Going through Sigillo, advantage has gone down to 8 minutes and 10 seconds now. Let's get the list of these full riders in the break for you. 10 riders are there, all 10 different teams represented as well. Agidezella Mondiale, the French team, with Julian Barratt, 14 minutes and 26 down. Marco Bandiera is there in the white for Androni Giocattoli Venezuela, the Italian Pro Continental team. Bandiera, an Italian rider, as his name suggests, the flag carrier of that team in the break. 38 minutes and 19 seconds down. Stefano Pirazzi there in the light green, always attacking in this race. You saw a shot in the black there as well of the Colombian rider, Carlos Quintero. 20 minutes and 17 seconds down, going through this beautiful town of Sigillo. Still in Umbria at the moment, heading up to skirting the Marche region and of course Tuscany, into just the corner of Emilia today, Emilia-Romagna. As well in the break, Lampremerida have Mattia Cataneo, 23 minutes and 56 seconds down. Great reception for them, as you can see on the side of the roads. Saturday, everybody off work. A race that unites a nation, and a huge, huge event every year.
And the weather conditions is good.
Exactly.
The last number of days, of course, the weather conditions not nice, and for the locals down here, that is horrible weather. It's not like back in Ireland last weekend when it was pouring rain. They were still out there on the roadside because it's the norm for them in Ireland.
They're made of sterner stuff. Mauro Finetto in the break as well. Neri Sottoli in the fluorescent yellow. He is our virtual leader on the road. 3 minutes and 28 seconds back. And he's accompanied by 4 other riders. Pierre Kemener, the Frenchman for Europcar, 28 minutes back. Edouard Vorgonov, the Russian from Team Katusha, 27 minutes back. Edvard Boassenhagen, birthday boy on his national day, is there, the Norwegian for Team Sky, 20 minutes back. And Juliana Redondo, one of the pre-race favourites, as we see one rider already down, had a bike change for Agidezella Mondiale, and I can tell you it is Axel Daumont, so not a good day for Agidezella so far, despite getting a man in the break. Young climber Daumont has gone down. Interesting that the rider in front of him is Danilo Vis from BMC. Not sure if he is with him as well. You can see, in fact, it's gone down on the face as well. Nasty bruise and mark. Bit of tarmac on the left cheek there. Not good. I'm interested to see if Vis has gone down as well, if those two are riding back to the peloton together. We shall investigate and find out. Sean, you mentioned Ireland ago at the minute. What about the RAS? Have you any predictions for that, whilst we've got exclusively British and Irish viewers?
Well, it's impossible for predictions for the RAS. You know, you look back at the years, you just never know who's going to be the favourite and who's going to be, you know, the one on the podium at the end of the day. It's a special race. It's small teams as well. You have only 5-man teams, so it makes it difficult for teams to control. If you get your best man into the race leadership in the first 2 or 3 days, to hold that is so difficult because you have only 4 men you know, there to do the work, and if you have one guy who's injured or something, well, then you're down to 3, and for that reason it's a very difficult race to control, but a great race, and it's a race that has got a huge following in Ireland, and you know, over the past number of years, it's a race that's going on for so long, but it has a huge following, and it's a very, very popular race for all the Irish riders. And the good thing is, you know, the national teams, club teams can take part in the RAS, which is nice for the home riders, the domestic riders.
The On Post RAS, which starts this weekend, I'm led to believe, in Ireland. So good luck to everybody in that. And of course, 2 weekends in a row, Irish fans can see top-level cycling. There was Adam Hansen, by the way, the Australian, coming back to the peloton. He's the man that we saw in no man's land, and Sean Kelly said it was a big ask. I think it wasn't an easy one to be proved right on there, Sean. But again, just had a minute and a half. He was never really going to make the junction. So Adam Hansen back with his Lotto teammates. I'm sure he'll try again. He's actually said he does want a stage win here. Bottle running and an early drink for Sky. Philip Dignan, talking of all things Irish, doing the work on the right-hand side as well. 123 kilometres remain. 8 minutes and 16. Seems to have stabilised now, Sean.
Yes, it is stabilised, and now we have, you know, on the front we have a bit of order, a number of teams just riding the pace, and at this advantage they can just keep on riding, keeping on working on it, and allow them to hang out there for a long time. But this front group is, you know, really focused on going on and trying to build up the big advantage, and you know, see can they go on to the final. But the way it's looking now, it's going to be also a difficult one, because if they're going to keep it at that around 8 minutes with this very difficult final, you need to have, you know, a big advantage for anybody to hold on out there.
Break on the left-hand side, 10 riders, 8 minutes and 16 seconds. Edvald Boasson-Hagen in the front as Eduard Vorganov, the Russian rider, comes through to do his turn in the red and white. Androni rider Marco Bandiera as well, and Ageda's rider Julian Barratt also next to come through and do his turn. 8:15 then, with 122.6 kilometres to go, but all the tasty stuff still remains. 2 first category climbs and a second category as well. Now, in a few minutes, our friends from Eurosport International are going to join us. The rest of the continent tunes in alongside you watching in the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland at the moment. So I'm sure you give Sean Kelly and myself a little bit of a moment to run through yesterday's stage, introduce today's stage again. We know you're joining us all the time. You might have been out late last night on a Friday night and tuning in late on a Saturday. No better thing to do than to watch the Giro d'Italia on Saturday. And if you're building up to the Cup final as well, we're off air before that starts, so no excuse to leave us before then. 122 k's to go. Giro d'Italia with Alessandro Petacchi there. Talking of getting up on a Saturday and watching the Giro d'Italia, that's not a bad way to do it, is it?
Just about made it. Bedroom window.
The peloton coming past, jumped up straight away. Other things to look at as well, apart from the Giro. Just look at that beautiful Italian scenery. Scenery's changing rapidly by the day. As I said very early on in the week, we went straight to Puglia, been through Basilicata, Campania. Yesterday in Umbria, after a brief passage in Lazio. Costacciaro, that beautiful little village on the hill there. Skirting around the Apennine mountain range. It's very similar to the Pennines in Great Britain. Certainly a lot higher in altitude, but similar in geography in that it splits the country very much like a spine. Runs straight down just south of Milan, all the way down through Abruzzo, and close to Basilicata, which is the mountainous region we mentioned the other day. Barratt, Pinazzi, Cattaneo, Bandiera, Quintero, Finetto, and alongside them Boissenhagen, Kemeneur, Voganov and Arredondo. Again, a word about the Colombians. In the break once more in their different teams. Team Colombia always represented, and it was interesting talking to a couple of their riders today. Yalinson Pantano, one of them, 3 minutes 50 back, and he really thinks that this is made for them today. They're going to have a real go with either Fabio Duarte, the leader, or himself, or even Grubiano.
Well, we're certainly coming into the train for the Colombians. It hasn't been their cup of tea at all. The terrain, the weather, but the good weather today, mountain top finish and a bit more of a gradient, something which they really perform well. So it'll be interesting to see this Colombian team with a lot of very up and coming promising talented riders, and we will see how they can perform. And we did see the following they have. They're so enthusiastic. We see them back in Dublin on Sunday evening after that stage finish, and so many supporters living back in Ireland, Colombian people, just came out to support them there. And the guys, they were just really so happy to be in this Giro d'Italia.
Well, Sean, whilst we still have an exclusively British and Irish audience, there's been another race going on in California that we've been showing here on Eurosport during the evenings. Of course, 2 more stages to go. You can join Matt Stevens and Brian Smith for that this evening and tomorrow. The man who looks like he's going to win it and returning to form, he says returning to his best weight, is Brad Wiggins. Now, Dave Brailsford is still being a little cautious as to whether he's going to give and commit to putting Brad Wiggins in the Tour team, but he certainly hasn't done himself any harm with his performance this week, has he?
No, he's coming good at the right good time. Just losing the weight gradually. We did always hear about he was overweight from the time he won the Tour 2 years ago. He had so many kilos extra, and he's getting that down, and a really good timing, and the performance he's putting up in California, it is impressive. And for the Tour of France, he looks like he's certainly going in the right direction. And it's difficult to see him not being in the team for the Tour, because the way he's going at the moment, considering the Tour of France as well, we have this stage 5 with a lot of cobblestones, and we see Wiggins' performance in the Paris-Roubaix this year. He can do that sort of train well. So yes, it's going to be interesting times to see what the selection of Sky team will be for Tour of France.
Tour de France that starts on the home roads for most of the Sky riders as well. Yorkshire Grand Depart coming up. Gear change there for Pierre-Hugues Kemeneur, who is the French rider riding for Europe Car in the dark green. Pirazzi comes to the front, another man who was quite seriously injured the other day. Teammate had to hold his saddle on the way up just to help him up there, but he lost enough time to be allowed away in this breakaway. 29 minutes and 26 seconds back. Cattaneo is the Lamper rider. Julian Barratt, an attacking rider from Agir, but this is a man to watch in terms of a stage win if they stay out there. Julian Arredondo, without doubt, the strongest climber and the strongest rider in that group. Not the man who would be primed to take the pink jersey, though, should the break stay away. That honour at the minute goes to Mauro Finetto, 3 minutes and 28 behind. There's all sorts of calculations to make later on, though, because Michael Matthews isn't really expected to come in with the main group. He is in the pink jersey. So I suppose, Sean, if you're looking for someone like Finetto to go into the pink jersey at the end of the day, you've really got to take the times from Evans, haven't you?
Yes, well, Finetto, he has a big advantage because in general classification, he, just under 3.5 minutes, where the other ones have a long way to make up. And when you talk about Arredondo, he is almost 20 minutes down, which is a huge time to pull back. And it's not looking like it's going to happen today, because now they've put the cap on it, and the Peloton, with a number of teams riding, they're just keeping it around the 8 minutes, and they will do that for quite a long time more. And when you come to the end, of course, well then that's where the time will start to drop off for the breakaway, because of these difficult climbs. But the riders who are out front, Arredondo, he's the one who can really finish strong over this very difficult terrain, a mountaintop finish. And then for the rest, Finetto, how will he hold on out in this difficult climbs at the end?
There's the break. We're going to go off for a little break ourselves. Join us again in just a moment here on Eurosport Cycling, Giro d'Italia, Stage 8 to Montecopiolo. Very warm welcome back, everybody. There are 116.7 kilometres to go today on Stage 8 of the Giro d'Italia, but it's the first real day of the Giro. The Giro takes off today. We have a very strong break of 10 riders at the moment. They've had around 8 minutes and 10 seconds at the latest check. Julian Barratt, Marco Bandiera, Stefano Pirazzi, Mattia Cataneo, Carlos Quintero, Mauro Finetto, Pierre Kemeneur, Julian Arredondo, Edvald Boisenhogen and Edward Vorganov, all in the break. Each and every one from a different team. Most of the small teams represented as well. As you'd expect, Columbian, Neri Sotoli, Bardiani and Androni all have riders in the break. Here's Emanuele Sella. Looking at today's profile, Sean, he'd be a man you'd be thinking of, wouldn't you? But on the smaller climbs, he hasn't been even going that well at all. He's lost a heck of a lot of time so far. Do you think that's done almost on purpose to allow him to go in the break later on in the race?
Well, he's lost a lot of time, but he's not the only one. And we talked about Pirazzi, although for the crash, you know, he lost a lot of time, but he was starting to try and lose time. You could see, you know, in the end of the stage, when there was a possibility there, he certainly wasn't giving his best. And we know the reason why. He's out here in the breakaway today, and that's what he wants to do, get into the breakaway, go for the mountain classification. Sella as well, I think he wants, you know, just to get enough distance in the general classification. When you're in the break, well, then you're not the one who's going to be chased down. And, you know, we've seen so many times in stage races, if there's a break of 10 riders and there's a guy who is up in general classification, sometimes they, you know, they start having a discussion out in the break, and when they say to him, well, you're the problem here, you're the reason the peloton is keeping us at this, you know, 2 or 3 minute advantage, and the guy ends up having to go back into the peloton because they all just start getting onto him. And it's an understood thing within the teams and the riders. So Sella, I think, is another one, is getting himself out of that situation. Or maybe he's not riding well in the beginning, and that's something you can have. The first week of racing, guys suffer a bit, but they come around depending on how you start. Some guys come to the start and they're a little bit off their best and not as good as they would like to be, so you need that first week of racing to get into it, and then as the race go on they start getting better. And Philip Duyden is the one who we talked about in the early part of this race. He, you know, came back from a broken collarbone, so he was saying, you know, it's going to be difficult in the first week, but then as the race go on he's hoping to get better. And he's a long ways down in general. You know, we'd be surprised if we don't see him up there for Sky some of the days in the breakaway, as we have seen, you know, Bosenhagen today. Because of losing time, they're going to throw men into the breakaway and try and win these difficult stages, these undulating stages and mountain stages.
Beautiful banners there, great messages, a real mix of things. I think Italian lessons were made for those sorts of things. Welcome to hell, welcome back to this region, and go guys. A real mix of sentiments, but all really, really pumped for today's stage. And of course, Marco Pantani remembered. Really remembered that. Leaving Umbria and going into the Marche. Next region of Italy. Umbria with Perugia as its main city. We finished yesterday in Foligno. This is the finish line in the meantime, as we go back quickly to the peloton. And interesting that Movistar started to put a man on the front as well. Slowly, some sense of organisation has come through to those riding behind. It took a long, long time to happen. Well, if you're joining us a little late, just to remind and inform you that this is, at the moment, an exclusively live British Eurosport broadcast. Our friends from International and Down Under in Australia are going to join us in just a couple of minutes' time. So just to remind you that we will introduce today's stage again, go through what happened yesterday, even have a look with Greg LeMond about Marco Pantani. That's just in a couple of minutes. For the moment, though, 112.6 kilometres to go. The break is away. Nairo Quintana back in the bunch, hoping to feel a little better. He says he's actually lost a little bit of power in his left leg, thanks to a hip injury he picked up the other day. He had a bit of a dig in the ribs as well for Cadel Evans in the Spanish press this morning. More about that a little later on this afternoon. 14 pro victories for the Colombian, riding for Movistar. This is the break then. 8 minutes is their gap. Front of the race represented by 10 different teams, 10 different riders. Who is going to take the win today, though? Will it be a fight between these guys in front, which would leave Cadel Evans very, very happy indeed, certainly with the bonus seconds out of the equation, provided, of course, he could stay in the mix behind with all the other teams. 8 minutes is the current time gap. It's been up as high as around 8 minutes and 45 seconds. 111.7 kilometres to go. So our friends are about to join us on Eurosport International and Down Under in Eurosport Australia. Good afternoon, everybody. It is the Giro d'Italia. It's stage 8 from Foligno to Montecopiolo, 179 kilometres. Today is the day that the Giro takes off. We go to the mountains, the first real climbs, the first category climbs, and a lot is expected of everybody out there on the road. The sun's turned up as well, which is very, very good news, given what we've seen so far. So we're into the Apennines, up the Cippo di Carpegna, famous climb that Marco Pantani used to train on. This is a 4 out of 5 star of those given in the ratings. A hard stage, the first real difficult stage of this Giro, and that first climb short, but very, very difficult. An uphill finish too, at 1,235 metres. This is what happened this morning. A very happy peloton, just having a chat about what was going to go on today. There would be a lot of politics played out during the first few kilometres of the race. A break would go quickly, various jersey wearers there. Michael Matthews still holding 3 of those jerseys, but of course he can only wear 1, and probably today his last day in pink. Peloton rolling out this morning then from Foligno, where they finished just a few hours earlier overnight. War wounds still present. These are live pictures from out on the course. I can tell you that there is a 10-man break out there on the road at the moment. It went very, very early on and provoked almost a standing stop in the peloton behind whilst they got organised, talked about who was going to take control. We'll quickly tell you who is in the break. Julian Barratt is there for AG2R Mondial. On the right-hand side of your picture, he's in the brown and white. On the left, we have Edvald Boasson Hagen, the Norwegian rider, riding on his birthday and on Norway Day. So happy Norway Day to everybody watching over in Norway. In the yellow that we saw a moment ago there is Mauro Finetto. He's the best placed man on the road at just 3 minutes and 28, so the virtual pink jersey wearer at the moment. Joining them, Carlos Quintero of Colombia, Stefano Pirazzi in bright green of Bardiani, Androni Giocattoli again have a rider in the break, just as they do seemingly every day. That once again is Marco Bandiera and the white for the Italian team. Eduard Vorganov in red and black is there for Team Katusha. Neri Sottoli, we've mentioned them with Finetto. Who are we missing out? Lampre Merida have Matteo Cataneo, Pierrick Camener for the French team at Europcar, and Julian Arredondo normally wouldn't be allowed out in the break. 90 minutes and 50 seconds behind, though, for the former favourite, and he is out there in black. We're getting a little glimpse there of Julian Barratt. Sean Kelly is alongside me. Sean, very good afternoon. It's an interesting watch today, and we had a really interesting look at the politics in the peloton around an hour ago when they were just deciding who was going to ride and who wasn't.
Yes, well, the politics, of course, when the break formed, then the politics started to come into it. You know, there was talk about who would control the race. Would Green Edge control the race with Michael Matthews, but Michael Matthews was saying that, well, he wasn't going to be able to, you know, hold on to pink jersey. And then, of course, the race starts off and the break gets away. Then we see the teams having a discussion, and the teams with big favourites here. We see Omega Pharma Quick Step in the discussions, also Movistar. I suppose the two big favourites of the race with Nairo Quintana, and from Quick Step we have
Roberto Uran.
Uran, and then we see that those other teams also got involved, and the breakaway in the meantime took an advantage very, very quickly. They went up over 8 minutes in a matter of kilometres, and that's because they were almost at a standstill back in the peloton. But then they got organised, and now we have a number of teams, BMC getting involved also. So there's a number of teams controlling on the front, and we see the gap stabilise, but still a very solid breakaway of 10 riders out here.
One of those local sprints set up there. There'll be a prize, usually monetary, and a little souvenir of the village they pass through that's been set up. Nothing to do with the overall points or anything to do with the points jersey or even time bonuses. It's local villages that like to set up their own prizes, and that looked like a nice way to enjoy the Giro d'Italia. Picnic tables set up along the side of the road, and as we were talking about as we came to air, Sean, it's a real contrast to what we've seen so far in this Giro d'Italia. Just look at that, blue sky, sunshine, and over 20 degrees. A very welcome sight to everybody out on the road.
Yes, well, it looks so much better, the countryside, with a bit of sunshine. Unfortunately, in this first week of racing, we haven't had it on any of the days, and I'm sure that the riders, will be so happy when they wake up this morning, they see that blue sky, because we know the roads here, they've been so dangerous, and we've seen the results of that, and it was becoming real difficult for the riders, and thank God we have nice conditions, and we need them today because we're going into the bigger mountains. We have this first category climb, and then we have that long descent. We need dry conditions for that, because if we had the wet again today, it would be so nervous for everybody, and may this weather continue.
8 minutes and 10 seems to be the gap that the peloton are happy at keeping at the moment. They had a gap of around 8 minutes and 46 while that panic was going on early doors. As Sean said, there was a lot of almost getting off the bike, talking and thrashing out a peace accord between those riders. It was a very, very strange situation, and not one we often get to see on our television screens. Evo Bossenhagen at the front there in the black. Happy birthday to him. Of course, another birthday in the peloton today. Sonny Colbrelli of the Bardiani team that rides at Pro Continental level for the Italians, an all-Italian team. Colbrelli moaning on Twitter this morning, saying, I've been doing the Giro for 3 years, and they never put a stage on perfect for my birthday. Always climbs. I think, Sonny, that's because your birthday always falls on the end of that first week when the climbs start to come into the Giro. It's not very good, but never know. One year he might get one of those transitional days. So happy birthday to him as well. Peloton chasing on and being led by an interesting mix of teams. There is a situation here, Sean, where I think all the Australians down under watching will be quite happy of, because Michael Matthews, the current leader, Orica Green Edge have decided not really to ride. Michael Matthews has said, here he is with 21 seconds of a lead over Cadel Evans, Rigoberto Uran in third, Rafa Micah fourth, and Morabito fifth. Matthews quite happy, I think, to lose the jersey today. He knows he's not about to compete. But Cadel Evans, I think, will be happy with this break in front, because he perhaps doesn't want to take the jersey too early in the race, and will be happy to see all the bonus seconds out the way. He'll just be happy to ride in with the rest of those who might want to attack him today. Yes,
well, with the situation at the moment, over 100 kilometres to go, that advantage of 8 minutes, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Will they hold on out there? There is a possibility, yes, but I think Evans will be happy with the situation out front, because, as you said, the time bonifications with the better climbers like of Uran, he will be concerned about that. So if some of the riders hold on out there, it will be this perfect scenario for Cadel Evans.
Michael Matthews in charge of the white jersey there. Nasser Bouhanni won yesterday, second Grand Tour victory, second victory on Italian roads this week. The Frenchman leads Giacomo Nizzolo by 16 points in the points jersey. Less points available at the finish today. We've got these different categorised stages that I'm not even sure the organisers understand this year. It's a right old mess. But in the end, it is designed that the sprinters have a better chance of taking the points jersey at the end of things. Matthews in the climbers jersey today as it stands, not wearing it, of course. Monchalinghi second, looking after it for him, but I think again we can perhaps expect to have a new leader, or at least some riders very, very close at the end of today. First category climbs coming up, a second category as well. BMC leading the time standings by team. They're a minute and 1 second ahead of Tinkoff Saxo, with Azure Desert in third. Megaformer, Quickstep and Lampre make up the top five. Time for us to go for a break. Keep it Eurosport Cycling and keep your tweets coming in. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling at Rob Hatch TV. Saturday afternoon, the sun's shining, beautiful Italian countryside and real racing on. What better to do than to watch the Giro d'Italia? Sean Kelly alongside me, Rob Hatch, today. A very warm welcome. 102.9 kilometres to go. Sean, today we've got the first real climbs. It's the Apennine stage of the Giro d'Italia. The Cippo di Carpegna, the first climb. It's short, but it's got 10% ramps, really. That last climb then to Montecopiolo, one of those climbs where the gradient changes quite a lot. No slight on Michael Matthews and his climbing ability, but we expect, and even he expects, to get a new rider wearing pink tonight.
Yes, I would certainly agree with that, the pink jersey is going to change. When you look at the terrain, you know, 2 first category climbs in the final, a second category thrown in just before the final one of the day. It's real serious stuff, and it's the first day that we're getting this serious mountains, and it's going to be a day where the general classification men, we could see a battle in this final. We will certainly see, I think, a little bit of an insight who's suffering a bit in general classification, because they will lose a little bit of time here, but it all depends what happened up front. If there's a big battle between the general classification men, well, then we will see some cracks, definitely. The breakaway with 10, of course, depend on how much of an advantage they will have going into the final climb of the day, or the final 2 climbs of the day. Will they be able to hold on to enough an advantage to contest for the stage victory? And that will have a bearing also how much of a battle is back in the main peloton. If it comes back together on the final climb of the day, well, then there's going to be a battle more so, because the stage victory is also there for the taking.
Well, it's one of those 2 possible different situations and scenarios really today. We've had our first question on Twitter. Thanks to Birdie for writing in. Remember, you can ask Sean your questions. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling. Let's get it trending this afternoon. And at Rob Hatch TV. Birdie's asked Sean, we mentioned that Cadel Evans may be given the opportunity today, if the break goes away, to just calm things down a little, fight himself against his own candidates, and even allow someone else to take the pink jersey a little early. Perhaps it may be a little early for him, but he's wondering why he wouldn't want to take the jersey today, Sean. Well,
we still have a very difficult amount of racing to be done in this Tour of Italy. We still have, you know, over 2 weeks of racing, and the most difficult is the final week. So it's all about, you know, conserving your energy with your domestiques, and if you take it on now as one of the big favourites, well, then you're going to have to do a lot of work with your team, and you can pay for that in the final week. So, you know, they always make the calculation, the big favourites, you do not want to get into the yellow jersey or the pink jersey in this case too early, but it's always, you know, difficult to make the calculation. With the, you know, the situation we have here at the moment, we can see that BMC are riding with a number of teams. Tinkoff, Saxo are riding, Movistar are riding, Omega Pharma Quickstep are riding. So all the men who are in here with the possibility winner of this Giro are riding on the front of the peloton to control the situation, but they're not getting overexcited. They're holding out 8 minutes. It was I think 8.5 minutes around the maximum, so they're just you know, controlling the situation at the moment. But will they up the pace? That is the question. And will they pull it back and try and, you know, close down these riders out in front? And if it's not the case, well, then, you know, there's some riders up here like a Finetto. He is, you know, only 3:28 down in general classification, but at the moment I'm concerned, you know, the way they're holding it, that this group of Breakaway will have problems holding on. Except for the real good climbers, Arredondo, for example, if he gets into, you know, the final mountain with, you know, 3 minutes and an advantage, well, then he's a real good climber, so he could be difficult to take back. So at the moment, you know, it's hard to make the calculation what's going to happen at the end of the race, and I suppose that's the good thing, the suspense of bike racing. Even myself, who've been in there in the peloton for so long, you just don't know what's going to happen at this point in the race with 99.7 kilometres to go.
It's all shaping up rather wonderfully today. There's Marco Bandiera again in the breakaway. In the meantime, even the director sportif and everybody else involved in the support of the race has to eat as well. Not just the waters, or the riders, pardon me, that need to be fed and watered. Bardiani there supporting Stefano Pidazzi in the breakaway. This is the Maglia Rosa group. Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey for the leader of the Giro d'Italia. Pink jersey, of course, because the Gazzetta dello Sport newspaper which originally organised this race. It's printed on pink paper. So many people outside on the side of the roads today. The weather has improved. It's a Saturday afternoon, and everybody in Italy, whether they like cycling or not, loves the Giro d'Italia. In the village of Cagli, almost seems like the entire town's come onto the side of the roads to say hello. One thing to watch out for today, certainly on this first climb to Cippo di Carpegnas, we remember Marco Pantani, one of his favourite training climbs in the region of Emilia-Romagna, where he was from, Cesenatico, where he lived most of his life. It gets very, very narrow to the top. If there's a lot of supporters on the side of the roads, then we're going to see certainly any sort of big group up there really, really struggle to get through. The good thing is the gradient is very hard, it's very steep. It's around 10% for the last 5Ks or so. So I think that the chances of getting biggest groups there are quite narrow. It's one that, again, both in the break and behind Sean, has the real potential to blow up early on today, and we could see a lot of action quite early.
Yes, well, it's a train where we could see a lot of action, and you know, that difficult climb, 35 kilometres to the finish. It could be one where we see a bit more action than normal because of where it's situated. It is a real difficult climb. It's the first category climb of the race, of course, and then you have the descent, and yeah, you have the second category climb, and then the climb to the finish. So we could see a surprise there, where we could see, you know, the race opening up that early out, but normally I think with a mountaintop finish it should be on the final climb of the day where we see all the action.
Evo Bossenhagen with that bandage on the right elbow. Today being in the break, a better birthday present than hitting the ground was the other day. Man coming through is Pierre Kemener, and not happy with the smallish turn taken there was Stefano Pirazzi, who obviously wants to push on here. If anybody is going to attack, I think we're looking at the man to attack the earliest. He's been down already, he's famed for his attacks, and I can guarantee that his fan club from Frosinone will have made the 1.5-hour drive up to the climb today. We're off for a quick commercial break. We'll see you in a minute on Eurosport Cycling. A day for those favourites who've lost some time to perhaps try and get some back. Steep climbs today. A lot of talk prior to this by Columbian fans that it was going to be Nairo Quintana's day to get some time back. There he is in third position for Movistar, who ride in formation. They were one of the teams asked to do a lot of riding by Orica Greenedge, who weren't keen to do so. A few of you writing in on Twitter, as we want you to do all afternoon, hashtag Eurosport Cycling, @RobHatchTV. And a lot of people asking, Sean, why this break so competent, 10 riders in it, was allowed to get so much time. Of course, we saw all that discussion. It was simply because nobody wanted to ride.
Nobody wanted to ride because of the situation today with a very difficult finish, and we have seen all the stages till now. It was Greenedge, Orica Greenedge, who controlled the situation because they knew with Michael Matthews they could hold on to the pink jersey and they could even win stages, and that's what they have been doing. And they have had a dream start to this Giro. The first week, you know, it has been an amazing week for them, winning stages, taking the team time trial in the opening stage back in Belfast, and you know, holding on to the pink jersey for the first week of the race. Today is a different situation, a very difficult final, and you know, Michael Matthews, it's going to be difficult for him. Look like it's going to be impossible for him to hold on in pink, but you never know. But they're definitely playing the game. They bluffed it well at the start when the breaker went away. They said, well, we're not chasing because we cannot, you know, get any more from this race. We're not going to hold on to pink jersey. And then we had the confusion where, you know, who was going to take the chase up, and the team started a discussion, and that's where this breakaway pulled that 8.5 minutes out very quickly. And you know, since that moment, after about 45 minutes of racing, we have the teams controlling on the front here, and it's you know, holding on at about 7 minutes at the moment. And now it's going to be an interesting one. Will this breakaway stay away? It is, you know, quite possible, because with the train we have got, do they want to really control it that much to, you know, to take it back in the end? But we just have to wait and see for a bit further on till we get to that final 40 kilometres to the finish.
We shall see. It's building up and boiling up beautifully. The gap has gone down to 7 minutes and 9 seconds. a real glimpse of how this is filmed for you. And of course, the beautiful countryside in the background. Picture postcard advert for the centre of Italy today. Heading up through various regions. Started down in Umbria, where we were yesterday in Foligno. Gone up through the Marche, which is just to the east of Tuscany. Very similar countryside and beautiful food and wine. A little bit cheaper than Tuscany as well, if you want to go for a visit. That's where Michele Scarponi's from as well. Most renowned rider from that region. Heading into Emilia-Romagna today, which of course was the terrain of Marco Pantani. We remember him. Lots of remembrance, even a monument up on his former training climb, which is the first category climb of this Giro d'Italia, 10 years after his death. Peloton coming through Cagli. 92.7 kilometres to go. We mentioned Nairo Quintana. Nairo's been quite vocal in the Spanish press this morning. We've had around 48 hours since that big crash incident. We've said most riders have said their piece already. Most have supported Cadel Evans in pushing on there, notably Ivan Basso saying that, well, that's what happens in racing. There's a couple, though, who have shown a bit of a rebel attitude. Nairo Quintana's one of them. Young rider, remember. He was the top young rider at the Tour de France. He was second on the podium last year. He was second only to Chris Froome. Nairo Quintana's comments, the Columbian this morning in the Spanish press, in El País newspaper, saying that I'm not sure if what the old man Evans, and I quote the old man Evans did, was a good example for the young riders like me who's starting. Not only the victory counts. Now, is that slightly bitter, or does he have some reasoning there, Sean?
No, I don't think he has a reason. I think it's all part of the tactic as well. You know, just create a little bit of pressure, try and make Cadel Evans a bit nervous maybe, and it could be coming from the team also, where there's a little bit more rivalry against Evans from the other riders as well. And if you start talking in that way, but if Nairo Quintana was in that group with Cadel Evans and Michael Matthews on the day of the big crash, guarantee that he would not be slowing down either. He would have continued on with that group. That's the look of racing, and you know, the way it happened in the very final, the racing was on. It's part of the race. The crashes are the risks that you take, and unfortunately, you know, there were so many riders went down, but I don't think we can, you know, take anything against Cadel Evans for the way they rode, and it's a perfect situation when a crash happens like that. In the end, you just have to continue on racing, and you know, the team was riding on the front for many kilometres before the crash occurred.
Michele Scarponi, another one of those who's been quite vocal, said the anger hasn't settled down yet. He feels that he was in great shape for the Giro d'Italia, and he feels that he's been pretty unlucky to lose some time. He now says that Cadel Evans is the clear favourite for the Giro d'Italia, given the fact that Scarponi feels that Evans is the most complete rider out the lot. Perhaps not the best in the mountains, but of course you have to be good overall. Scarponi was saying that if he was in front, he wouldn't have waited. And again, as much as you admire Scarponi for probably being the funniest guy in the peloton and the nicest guy to the journalists and everything else, perhaps he's a little out of touch with everybody there, you have to say. Scarponi's director didn't see it the same way as the team leader. Beppe Martinelli saying, now in cycling modern days now, we forget after 5 minutes, the anger goes. It's not like years ago where we used to remember for months and months and months and have a go at each other. Do you remember anything like that, Sean, with your teams? Having a bit of a grudge against somebody for something untoward they did in the peloton, trying to get revenge a few months later?
Well, I had a situation many years ago, of course, back in the Paris-Nice with Stephen Roach, my fellow countryman. He was race leader going to the final day before the penultimate stage on the Sunday morning, and I put my team on the front to ride because it was an undulating stage, 100 kilometres, relatively short. I wanted to, you know, get rid of the good sprinters so I could take time bonifications, and Roach punctured 25-30 kilometres from the finish, and my team, you know, upped the pace a little bit, but they had been riding for, you know, 50-60 kilometres before that, and there was a lot of discussion about it as well, and I said, okay, you know, we've been taking control of the race, we made the race difficult, what do you expect us to do? And if we stop riding, well, the journalists will say, well, I was riding for Roach in that situation. So, you know, it's something you have to, you know, consider what's been happening beforehand and what point it is in the race. So, you know, you just have to forget those things and get on with it.
Well, that and other episodes could be read in Sean's book, which is available. Put it out last year. Very good read indeed. Good to have a look for it. We're off for a break. See you in a minute. Giro d'Italia, Saturday afternoon. It is the first big Giro stage on the way up to Montecopiolo today. Breakaway of 10 riders that's on your screen right now. If you're joining us a little late, Julian Barratt, Bandieras there, Pirazzi, as is Quintero, Cattaneo, Finetto, Kemeneur, Arredondo, Boissenhagen and Vorganov. Cattaneo on the left-hand side in the pink and dark blue coming through. And it's almost lunchtime for the peloton. Feed zone at Aqualagna. Just one feed zone today, given the fact that we are under 200 kilometres. Remember, yesterday's stage going over 250, sorry, the day before, pardon me. Hence the reason for 2 feed zones. Very surprising to see Julian Arredondo make the break today. And of course, once you look down at the time that he's lost, not so much so. He's a quality rider, best climber without a doubt in this group, one of the best in the whole Giro d'Italia. This time last year, he was riding in the Tour of California. This year at the Giro, stepped up to World Tour level. A big test for him. Started the season excellently in the Tour of San Luis in Argentina. Juan Miguel Vargas has written in and asked how is Team Colombia placing 1 or 2 riders in the breakaway every single day. Well, they're covering every single attack. Their mission is to light up this Giro d'Italia. Breakaway through the feed zone. Easier job for the Soigneurs with just 10 riders there. Comes a little harder when the peloton come through. Expect the gap to maybe increase another 20 to 30 seconds after that. Chris Sutton, CJ Sutton, who's had all those knee problems this year. He's got a back wheel problem there. No real rush at the moment. There's a decent pace being put on by the peloton, but plenty of time to get back in. To be honest, Chris Sutton, I don't think he'd be too offended if we say that he's not going to be involved in the end today, the Aussie. It's all about the other Australians up there. Cadel Evans. We expect the jersey to be passed from Michael Matthews to Cadel Evans, one Aussie to another. Great feature about Australian racing and its history in the Giro d'Italia in the national paper in Italy today, the Gazzetta dello Sport, the national sports newspaper, the most popular one at least. Other sports newspapers are available. Try and summarise that for you in just a moment's time. Several other problems, one of them being a back wheel change required for another Bardiani rider. Bardiani man in question was Sonny Colbrelli on his birthday. Adam Hansen was another Aussie who tried to bridge the gap and get into the break today. Didn't quite happen for him. Attempted to bridge the gap and got about 1.5 minutes in front of the peloton, but by then the gap was already almost at 9 minutes. Big questions today. One of 2 scenarios. Either break goes and takes the stage, which is looking a little less likely now, given the fact that peloton have managed to bring the gap down almost willingly, quite easily, to 7 minutes before. It's just gone out slightly again as we approach the feed zone. Of course, the second scenario, and one that we're still not sure may happen, given the unpredictable nature of bike racing and the beautiful way in which everything's set up today, is that we see a real attack and real interest from the GC boys behind. First chance to take a few seconds back as we go through Aqualagna, one of the most famous trade points for white tartufo, the truffles in Italy. Stage 8 of 21 here on the Giro d'Italia. Of course, Eurosport Cycling, we want to hear your views on it. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling, at Rob Hatch TV. Sean Kelly is alongside me and, of course, is waiting for your questions. Stefano Pirazzi, not many questions about him. Always loves to attack. One of the most exciting riders in the pro peloton. Not too much doubt about that. Of course, Never a man who's going to go on to win a big race like the Giro d'Italia. But he's one that is very much loved by the fans. Il Pira, as he's nicknamed. Decent ruler, battling climber, king of the mountains last year. There's Julian Arredondo, riding for Trek Factory Racing. Arredondo, one of 2 leaders for the overall when they started out with Kieselowski. Kieselowski, the sole leader now of Trek Factory Racing, the only man who wasn't really caught up as much in that crash the other day, 2 minutes 24 behind. It's actually Arredondo's debut in a 3-week race. Started the season very early preparing for this in San Luis, as we mentioned. And hello to our Australian friends in the caravan again. We've seen them the last 3 days along the route in the Giro d'Italia. Thanks to all you Aussies staying up at home overnight to watch us, late night on a Saturday. Stubby holders are out, I'm sure, keeping those beers cold. And I tell you what, your national sport was really, really picked up in the Italian papers today. All the talk of 1914, the first Australian to take on the Giro d'Italia. First stage win back in 1982 with Michael Wilson. Viareggio to Cortona that day. And just a few months after, Phil Anderson took a first stage of an Australian in the Tour de France from Basel to Nancy. Of course, the first Australian in the pink jersey was Cadel Evans in 2002. He had it for 2 days before losing out to the eventual winner, Paolo Salvodelli. I think he was up on the Passo Coe on that occasion. But a lot of praise for Australian cycling, their development centre in Varese in the north of Italy. Matthews and Evans. The most likely passage of the jersey today from one Aussie to another. It's wonderful how Australian cycling really has developed in the last 20 and 30 years, and you'd have to say, Sean, that both on the road and on the track, they're possibly the most advanced nation in terms of thinking on the planet at the minute.
Well, I think they have really become a force in road cycling. Australia was always, you know, the track cycling. They had some great athletes going back for many years, but with the Australian Institute of Sport, I think, you know, they have developed some magnificent great road cyclists in the past 15 years.
Break time for us. We'll see you in a minute on the Giro. Today a true test for all climbers on the Giro d'Italia. But it's set for Boasson-Hagen out there in the break. 27 today. Also got time to reflect on his career development, Sean. He's been at Sky now for a few years. The Giro d'Italia, incidentally, was the first race that he really exploded onto scene into, winning his first Grand Tour stage for HTC Columbia, I think it was back then, 2009. He's been an excellent rider, but do you think if he'd been in another team with more chances to ride for himself that he'd have achieved more?
Well, there was a lot expected of him in the earlier years, and we did think that he was going to be a better classics rider. Certainly, I thought he would have, you know, won one of the major classics already, but he hasn't been performing, I think, as I was expecting. If you go back 5 years ago, I was expecting, like, you know, a big monument to be won already, but he hasn't done that. Ghent Wevelgem is the closest he have got. That was in 2009 when he was riding for Team Columbia. But, you know, he has won some, you know, really big races, and he's still only 27, let's remember. It feels like he's around for an awful long time, but the age he's at, I think there's room for improvement, and there's, you know, many great years ahead, because at 27, as we know in cycling, up to 32 you can compete, you know, really good, and you can be at your best around, you know, from 27 to 30 on.
Michael Matthews there, plenty more of his career to come. Talking about his love for Italy in the paper this morning, showing that the Giro isn't just a race, but it's an event too that enamours people. 23-year-old Aussie says he's decided that his wedding will take place next year in Florence. He's promised not to go down the Jim Carrey Dumb and Dumber route and go with a bright-coloured tuxedo, but he suggested that he might be pressured in the end into wearing something pink. I think a tie would be the limit, though. So congratulations to Michael Matthews. Florence, a beautiful city. Of course, he's already been a visitor there last year for the World Championships. A lot of cyclists live and train in Tuscany. But just showing that as we see the beautiful nature of Italy on television, he sees it every day out on the bike. This is where we've been today. Foligno through Nocera, Umbria. Sigillo, we saw the Peloton passage, Casciano, Aqualagna, and this is where we are, approaching Urbania, known as Castel Durante until a few centuries ago. Changed its name in honour of a pope, Pope Urban VIII, famous for producing ceramics and has a real medieval look to it, as you can see. Palazzo Ducale, just on the left of your screen, the far tower. And there's a Baroque cathedral as well. Edvard Boasson-Hagen on Norway Day, on his birthday. Interesting to see what happens in his career from now. Does he stay at Sky? Does he make that move? Julian Barratt on the right-hand side there for the French team, Age d'Isère. What a start to the year they've had. And Marco Bandiera, one of those competing for the Fuga Pinarello, the breakaway prize. Only a maximum number of riders allowed in the break for that prize to count, though, Sean.
Yes, maximum 11. Over 11 does not count for the Fuga Pinarello, the longest number of kilometres out on front, and they're going to clock up some, good kilometres a day here. It's amazing, like when you look at that classement, the amount of kilometres some of the riders have been, getting out in front of the race, and still recovering every day and able to get back in there and compete again. 444 kilometres is Andrea Fedi from Nera Sottoli, who is the leader at the moment, I often ask myself, these guys who can do these big breakaways and do them not only one day, but they can do them 2 or 3 days on the trot, and to recover from that, the amount of fitness those guys have got, it's a special talent as well, because if some of the riders, if you take the sprinters for example, if they have to do that, they find it difficult to recover. So all guys have a special qualities. Some guys are sprinters, some guys are climbers, some guys are the rolleros who can go out there and ride all day on the front of the bunch on the breakaway. And the guy with 444 kilometres already on the front of this race, and we're only at the end of the first week.
Emanuele Sella there again, back to the cost several times today. In front of him, Fabio Aru wearing the number 3. And then Fabio Aru has promised to attack today. Big article in the national paper. Both he and Scarponi saying today was their day. They've studied the course, they know the course, they've come up with a plan. Of course, it's a little easier for Scarponi to do so, given the fact that he's from the Marche region, which is where we're headed through at the minute, on our way into Emilia-Romagna. Finished today sort of an historical border region between both Tuscany, of course, Emilia-Romagna, and the Marche. It was all kingdoms, various regions where they all used to come to battle. Natural geographical border, given the presence of the mountain at Montecopiolo. But who's going to battle on the climbs today? We've had historical battles here. Merckx and Fuente, all the way back in 1973. Attacking Jose Manuel Fuente on that day. It's a very, very sharp gradient to go up. 101 kilometres ridden, 77.6 remain. That is the first climb, Cippo di Cardegna. Not the longest of the Giro d'Italia by any means, but it is very, very sharp and very steep. The last 5Ks, 10% around, and the first time that a lot of people are going to be found out. And not just in terms of ability, Sean, but we might get a sense of who's still really suffering from that crash as well, because especially after over 100 kilometres on the bike again today, the chase really on now. If you're having a slightly off day, you could lose the Giro here.
You certainly could. And again, if you're coming back from a crash, and there have been so many of the crashes in this first week of the race, if the injury is, still a bit of a handicap for you, you can, suffer a lot in the stage today. And not only injury, if you're not in good shape for some reason, the weather conditions as well in this. It has been, you know, a difficult first week for the riders, wet conditions all the time, and that can affect some riders. You know, they do not support bad conditions very well, so we could see that happening, and that being a problem for some of the general classification men as well. But it all depends on what way the race will be, you know, fought out in the end. Now looking at the breakaway, it's still just under 7 minutes with 76 kilometres to go, so they're holding off very well, and it looks like they could go a long ways into the final. And it's the front end of the bunch, their teams who are riding up front. They are going to control the situation. Are they giving it 100%? And the breakaway of 10 men are really pushing on strongly, or are they just allowing to hang out there and just put the cap on it at around the 7 minutes? And it has been like that for quite a long time now, because they can make the calculation. The guys who are out there, they're going to lose time anyway in the final. And if the breakaway is allowed out there, well, then it will take, you know, a lot of the nervousness out of this final. But if it comes back together for the final time, well, then we could see a big battle here with a lot of riders, general classification men, other riders who maybe have lost a bit of time in the general classification, want to go for a stage victory and get some glory. So we'll just have to wait. I think the 50 kilometres, we will see then, you know, what the tactic is being used by the riders and by the teams.
Nice humour there from Julian Arredondo. A cheeky hello in the only form he could really do whilst eating and drinking to those back at home. Nice to see that sort of attitude, especially after the last few days where he really has had a bit of a nightmare in his first ever 3-week race. Not through any fault of his own, really. This was the moment again.
I can't sleep.
Big learning curve for him, but of course has so much class.
Yeah, you don't get much energy from it, but today, because it's good weather, you'll have more energy, I reckon. I reckon too. Puts you in a better
Well,
mood
listening
to
in
play.
to Michael Matthews' conversation. Apologies if you heard any words that offended you there. Certainly wasn't our intention to show them you. But again, just commenting on the weather, saying that it's been poor weather, for want of a better word, that he was talking about, and saying that you can get a bit of energy from the sun. You feel like that?
Yes, I think it does help. First of all, you know, it takes the stress out of the race, and there certainly has been so much stress because of all these crashes we've been having. And when you see the dry roads, you really say it's going to be that bit safer today, so that takes a bit of weight off your shoulders, and you say, well, you know, it's going to be an easier day on the descents, and that is a relief to everybody. And being in it for, you know, a week of the bad weather conditions, it's certainly a big help to have the good condition. You could see that the riders, you know, the good conditions, they give you that little bit more of energy, and it's a combination of a number of things.
6 minutes and 46. We're approaching the only intermediate sprint of the day. Just one intermediate sprint on each stage of the Giro d'Italia this year. Comes at 73.8 kilometres to go. How do you think they're going to approach this, Sean? You can see that 1 kilometre to go. Anybody going to be really bothered about taking that? Do you think maybe the smaller teams, we've seen it contested? Or is it a case of rolling on and through and keeping this nice and strong and all cohesive?
Well, you know, with so many riders in the breakaway, we could see a little bit of a sprint there between 2 or 3 riders just to pick up the prize money, and each time as they go through the intermediate sprint, there's 500 euros for the taking. So, you know, again, for some of the teams it's important to get a bit of cash in the bag, as they say. So you just never know, and sometimes they just roll through, and whoever happens to be on the front just is allowed to take the top prize.
Intermediate sprint then in Urbania. Gap down to 6:47. They've lost about 2 minutes from their maximum advantage. Climb to come after that, but still another 40 k's down the road before we get to the top of Cipo di Carpegna. Road starts to go uphill again at around 58 kilometres to go. 6:46, just waiting to see what will happen here. Everybody at the minute still coming on, rolling on to do their turns. Julian Barratt, the Frenchman in the white. Vorganov on the right-hand side. A few people start to get bunched up and think about what's going to happen here. There's Arredondo, visibly smaller than the rest by quite a long way. Almost looks as if he's riding a child's bike compared to the rest of them out there. There's Vorganov, the Russian, in the red and white. Bandiera, the Italian, in the white and blue for Andronio Catali. Aforementioned and already talked about Edvald Boasson-Hagen for the Norwegians and, of course, for Team Sky. And it is Eddie Boss who's going to have a go. Out on the right, nobody's going to compete with him. Sky want the points, he wants the points. And Edvald Boasson-Hagen takes himself a nice €500 birthday present. Nothing wrong with that.
To give him the birthday present.
Happy birthday, Edvald. Happy Norway Day. Oh dear. Now then, Francesco Chicchi. How has that happened? Ended up in a ditch.
Over the barrier.
Well, he looks a little hurt, which is understandable. Not a nice thing to go into at a decent speed, and they're all rolling along at a decent speed at the minute. Perhaps some riders finishing their dinner. Kiki's been a man who's been down on the ground a few times so far during this Giro d'Italia. He's just being checked out by his team and those around. We really do hope he's okay. Now then, Nairo Quintana, I wonder if he was caught out in this at the back. On the radio, chatting with the team car, rolling along as if there was no problem whatsoever. There is Kiki back on his bike. Really hope, for the sake of the general classification fight here, that Nairo Quintana was not down on the ground, because he already came into this worrying about a lack of power in his left leg today, Sean.
Yes, it looks like he was in the rear of the peloton there. We've got, you know, just a little moment of him on the screen, but he looks okay back on his bike there. Kiki looked as he was suffering, but I think put on a bit of show as well. He seems to be okay.
72.5 kilometres to go. Time for a break on Eurosport Cycling. Now, a little bit like the chair at the Grand National, Francesco Chicchi coming a cropper on that hurdle. What happened there, Sean? It just looks like his front wheel buckled.
Yes, it looked like something blocked his wheel. Looked like the front one. The bike just seemed to, you know, just go to the left and straight over the barriers, body and bike. And it was like, as you said, it's like a bad attempt at a hurdle. And looked like he was injured in the beginning, because he seemed to have to be suffering, but back on his bike and looks okay. And it's a one where, you know, you could hit a real smack off the barrier and you could do a lot of damage so very quickly.
Fran Ventoso, the former Spanish champion and the sprinter, doing a lot of work on the front, acting as road captain as well for Movistar at the minute. He was one of those involved in the big discussions at the start of the day when we were seeing who would ride, who wouldn't. This is Urbania. We've previously mentioned it being called Casteldurante. Famous for those ceramics and potteries. Absolutely glorious view. Six minutes and 19, the break. Down to 70 kilometres to go. Had the intermediate sprint out of the way. There is Fran Ventoso on the left, bandaged up heavily after that crash yesterday. We're going to get an official time gap now. And this is Axel Daumont, French rider, young climber who was down on the ground very, very earlier on today. Is it a day for Domenico Pozzovivo, we wonder? Didn't manage to perform in front of his home crowd the other day. Down in the south of Italy in Basilicata. 2 minutes and 11 down. Still a man to watch. Certainly as the road goes uphill and it gets harder. Just while we're on the subject of Fran Ventoso having a crash, there was actually a split in the peloton after the stage yesterday. 23 seconds, and Nairo Quintana was actually caught up in that second group. 186 riders finished the stage into Foligno, but of course the problems that occurred with punctures and a couple of crashes, certainly with Fran Ventoso, as we see, actually happened in the last 3 kilometres yesterday. The jury deciding at the end of the day to neutralise those 23 seconds, so Nairo Quintana did not lose any time whatsoever. A couple of more complaints from the sprinters yesterday, saying that the GC boys were ruining their chance to sprint inside the 3Ks, saying that it was all too congested. Typically, as always, it's always the guys that lose out that complain, and it was Davide Pologna on this case. Actually, Desert rider saying that he just cannot understand why sprinters have to fight it out with the GC guys at the end. You can sort of understand both points of view, can't you, really, Sean?
Yes, you can. And you know, the sprinters certainly have problems when you have, you know, a team of riders with a general classification men up there in the final kilometres, but you know, they all have to try and stay up there because, you know, time taking on the line, and they're all really nervous about losing seconds. And I suppose the unfortunate thing is for the sprinters, they can't get up there in the climbs to be in the way of the general classification.
It's not really fair, is it?
So it's not a very fair one, yes.
Giro taking off today, going uphill. We're going to find out, is Nairo Quintana bluffing? Said that he's going to wait until the big mountains, but will we see him today? 2.5 hours in the saddle. One thing that Quintana did say in his pre-stage declarations today is that he's actually missing Joaquim Rodriguez. He thought that it would be a really good ally in the mountains. Of course, strong climber, similar to him, same language. Do you think that's going to be a miss for him?
Well, yeah, it's possible. It will depend on the situation in the end of the race, because if Joaquim Rodriguez is, you know, in the race and he's in really good shape, well then maybe he would be an ally for Quintana. But again, I don't think Quintana should need too much help in the mountains. If he's in the shape that we've seen him in the past, and this final week of racing, he should cause so much damage to everybody. And, you know, looking at the general classification, a lot of people talking about Cadel Evans. I'm a bit concerned for Evans that, you know, Rigoberto Uran, the other Columbian, Ramica Fama, Quickstep, and Quintana, they're going to be a handful to control when we get to these difficult mountain top finishes. Cadel Evans will have to be his best, and we've seen Evans, you know, he is a real good climber, but when we get to the steep stuff, the explosive stuff, and, you know, the real good climbers, they're so explosive. The advantage he's got at the moment over them guys, he will need it all.
There is Cadel Evans, first wore that pink jersey in 2002 when a Mapei employee. 21 seconds back, just making his way back to the peloton after a journey back to the car. This is the time to do such thing before we get to the serious climbing. You mentioned Rigoberto Uran there, Sean. He's 1 minute and 18 off the lead of Michael Matthews. He's just under a minute behind the man we were talking about, Cadel Evans. Here's the accident again for Francesco Chicchi. Front wheel going beneath him, and that could have been a lot worse in terms of injury. Again, a bit of magic spray we've seen being administered by the car. Looks better. He's just checking out his own injuries again. And he's not had the best time of it so far in this Giro d'Italia, the Neri Sottoli sprinter Francesco Chicchi. I mean, today wasn't going to be a day for him anyway. Much more of a day for the likes of Rabottini, or including Finetto, the man in the brake kit. This is Cataneo, and these are his men out there with him. Quintero, Finetto, Barratt, Pinazzi and Kemener. Boissenhagen we've seen taking those sprint points. Vorganov is there as well, as is Julian Arredondo. 66.6 kilometres to go. We'll get another break out the way, then we can see the action a little further down the road.
Welcome back. Tour of Italy, stage 8. 10-man breakaway at the moment, and we've had this breakaway out for quite a long time. 65 kilometres to go, and 5:59 advantage at the moment. We can see the teams chasing. All the big favourites have put men on the front here to control this breakaway. Advantage was 8.5 minutes maximum. As we can see here, we've had some problems during the day as well. We had some crashes. Nothing what we've been seeing in the earlier days, because this Giro has been such a difficult race for everybody. The weather conditions, so many crashes for the big favourites, and some of the big favourites already, you know, losing too much time, far too much to have any chance of doing something in the general classification. Today we're having good weather conditions, the conditions we would have been expecting in this Giro, but I think everybody is so happy that the sun is shining, and first day in the big mountains, first category climbs. Everybody is looking forward to it. We are certainly looking forward to it, and I think it will be a big battle in the end of the day, with two really big mountains in the final of this stage.
Well, wherever you're watching around the world, we certainly hope that you're looking forward to this as much as we are. It really is boiling up to be a wonderful day on the Giro d'Italia, and I think we deserve it after all the bad weather we've had, as you said, Sean. The riders certainly deserve it. That is the special bike that's been produced for the Japanese champion, beautifully in pink for this pink Giro d'Italia. Yuika Arashiro, a nod to everybody watching back home. A couple of Japanese riders in this peloton. We mentioned it yesterday, in fact, Fumiyuki Beppu as well, riding for Trek Factory Racing. Francis Deschamps with riders behind, and again, going back to those weather conditions, we heard it very briefly in those words from Michael Matthews. Everybody just so happy to see the sun. Here's Boston Hagen in the meantime, 72 victories. Pro since 2006, as you can see. Previous national champion of Norway. And it's our daily glimpse of Gianni Savio in the meantime. Even in the sun, it's not time for the casual shorts and dress, the suit's on, sharp as ever. And he's got a man in the breakaway, nothing changes. Down to 6 minutes and 2 now. Of course, when that break and that gap goes down to around 3 minutes, that's when the sort of situation really starts to change, Sean, because the minute we have Mauro Finetto at 3:28 behind, so that's when it's going to swing to being much more of a GC day, isn't it?
Yes, well, I think the 50 kilometre point, that will be a good indicator what the advantage will be, and as we can see, it is coming down slowly now. When the pelotons got organised, and it took a little bit of time, as we mentioned in the earlier part of our programme, there was a little bit of discussion going on between the big teams of the men who are in with a chance of winning this Giro d'Italia, and when they did get organised, they had the advantage at about 7.5, 8 minutes, and they were holding it at that, and now it's starting to come down, and 50 kilometres is always a good indicator. If it continues to come down, well, then we could see, and we will have a better indication if this 10-man breakaway can hold on out there. Will the gap be sufficient? And with some of the riders we have in here, very good climbers, they will need that 3.5 minutes when we go into the final 25-30 kilometres of an advantage to hold on and have a chance to have a go at stage victory.
We talked about the history of this stage earlier on. José Manuel Fuentes and Eddie Merckx back in 1974. Well, it was Fuentes' day on that day. The Cannibal, though, regaining time later on in the race. Time trialling now. We've had another rider down. Not good news. Yannick Eisen this time. There seems to be a bit of this going on today, certainly at the back of the peloton, Sean. Perhaps a sign of people taking things a little too casually?
Well, it's surprising to see the crashing continue on crashing with the weather conditions, but it's something that we're seeing there. Riders having road rash once again. Did they come down together, or are they just crashing individually? We haven't seen. We see Kiki's crashed there a bit earlier on, but other than that, we haven't seen the other ones at what point they come down, in what way did they come down, whether the individual or whether they come down a number of riders together earlier on, very early in the day. That is possible. And I'd not be surprised the way it was very active in the earlier part, because there was a lot of racing done in the first 45 minutes for the breakaway to get away, for this 10-man group to form on the front of the bunch and to be allowed to go away.
Look at the last kilometre today. Hardest climb is the first climb we're going to take on today, but it's certainly not easy towards the end, and with the accumulation of climbing meters as well, it's going to feel a lot stronger on the body. Final kilometre does level out ever so slightly. Not the strongest gradient of a final climb to Montecopiolo. Final 300 metres, as you can see, everybody making their way to the line. Great video that they film for us daily. You can see all the amateur cyclists, and that's the great thing about these mountain stages as well, Sean. You get all the local cycling clubs, all the fans of Marco Pantani that we've already been talking about. They'll have been up there very, very early on in their hordes, taking a picnic in the backpacks. And another great thing about cycling is that everybody can get involved and everybody can ride the same routes and same roads and see what it's like themselves.
Well, that is the great thing about cycling, and I think that's why you get so many people on the roadside, because they get so close to the athletes when they're giving it full effort on the big climbs. The final mountain you can see here, you can ride up it before the riders come along. And we have seen back in Ireland, of course, we did see that guy with Marcel Kittel who got a selfie just after the finish, which is amazing that when the riders come over the line, they continue on for 200 or 300 meters, and you can get so close to the riders. In football, in tennis, there is no chance of doing that, and to get an opportunity to play on these terrains, on these football pitches, golf course to get out on these major golf courses. It's so difficult to do.
You've got to pay a lot of money usually, or win a competition.
It's going to cost you so much money, and here you can ride the final time of the day before the riders come along. Then you can sit out there, hopefully in the sunshine, and watch the riders as they come up in full action.
It's exactly what our friends are going to do out on the road today. Now then, puncture for one of the Giant Shimano riders, not deemed important enough by our cameraman to stay looking at it. Number 46 there on your picture is Steven Kruijswijk, rider of the Belkin team, who really made his name at this race a few years back. 74, Chalapud, who was in the break the other day. We're off for a break ourselves. 60 kilometres to go. A very warm welcome back. We're approaching the first bits of difficulty of this Giro d'Italia, the first bits of difficulty provided by the terrain, that is. We've had the weather and the elements providing all sorts of difficulty all week. This is the Peloton. Don't be surprised if it starts to get a little more nervous again soon. Movistar, Omega Pharma Quickstep, Katusha doing a lot of riding. In fact, pardon me, BMC, I was going to say I was a bit surprised if Katusha did too much riding after what's happened to them over the last few days. There's Stefano Pidazzi on the front. One of the favourites to light this up once we get to the climb. Same with the Colombians as well. I know a lot of Latin Americans watching today. We thank you for watching, and of course hoping that their heroes do the thing. It could be a real day for the Colombians. Not just Uran and Quintana, Sean, but of course the team has won. They've come here looking for more stage wins than the overall, really. Yes, they have Fabio Duarte, but already we're talking 3.5 minutes back. Colombians as a team would be very, very happy to take a stage win in the hills from this Giro d'Italia.
Yes, I think, and it is a big possibility they will do that. When you look at the riders and the way they've been performing as well, they have been in the breakaways all the time in this race, and we're not in the terrain that they like, the flat terrain. They've been up there. Now we're getting into a bit more of their terrain, which they perform quite well on it. And as we go further into this race, I think it's going to get better for them. The weather conditions as well, they would like to see the sunshine today and a bit more warmer, but it's a very strong team, some young riders there, and they have 2 riders from Colombia out in the front here today, so that is going to be interesting. But will this breakaway hold on as we get to this under 60 kilometres to go? Still a 6-minute advantage. I think as we get on to this first climb of the day, the first category, we will see then what will happen. If there's some action back in the bunch, will there be a team that will take it up and really start pushing on and eat into the advantage of the breakaway? If it holds the 6 minutes as we go over this first climb, well then this breakaway of 10 men, they could be, some of them have a chance of going for the stage victory today.
Well, the first little peak of this climb is unclassified, Sean. It just goes up, it doesn't count towards the King of the Mountains points. Then we have a very short, sharp climb. It's been described in different quarters, certainly by a lot of people who know what they're talking about. Renowned journalist Daniel Friebe, who's written a couple of books, in fact, on the best climbs around the world to go cycling in. He said this morning that the Carpegna climb is short but incredibly steep. Above all, very narrow, though. If there are fans up there and no barriers, I'm not quite sure how the barriers and the fans and the riders will all fit up there. This is Montecopiolo. That's the view out to the Adriatic Sea, by the way, over the Marche region. Looking over to Cesena and Cesenatico, the birthplace of Marco Pantani. Michel Condé, another man who knows his cycling stuff and has done great previews on the stages. You can see his previews at seacycling.com. He said this morning that it's the first big struggle of the day, this first climb up to the Carpegna. First couple of kilometres not real steep, he says, but the final 5.3 kilometres have an average gradient of more than 10%, maximum of 14%, and he's actually called it as much as a mini Mortirolo. So this is some serious climbing, Sean.
Yes, it is a serious climb, and it will all depend what happened in the peloton. At the moment, the advantage for the breakaway, it's still a substantial lead, so I think that will possibly calm things back in the peloton of big favourites, and if they do not really push on here, well then it will have not much of a bearing on the race. It will be the very final climb, and as we all know, it depends on how you ride a climb. It can be very steep, but if you just go up at an easier pace, well then all the big favourites will have no problem staying together. But if they do start attacking each other with the gradient, well then I think we will see a lot of splits here. The descent is the thing. Will they be concerned about that, and will that make the race a bit nervous? I think with the distance from the finish to this this first category climb of the day, I don't think it will be a major one that we will see big action. I think it will be all down to the very final climb of the day and the mountaintop finish in Montecopiolo.
Rigoberto Uran there, just making his way back to the back of the peloton. If you need a chat with the car, Sean, if you want to talk directly face-to-face with the Director Sportif, now is the time, isn't it?
Well, I think there is always, the time when you can go back, and certainly now it's 55 kilometres to go before we come to this climb, because when we start this climb and then you have the descent, we're into, the part of the race where it's so difficult to go back, because there will be certainly riders dropping the climb. The non-climbers, the sprinters, they will have difficulty here, so it will get certainly broken up on that climb. So if you need to talk face to face with your Director Sportif at this point, it's the time to get it out of the way.
Maglia Rosa group, the group of the pink jerseys, the gap goes under 6 minutes. Who's got to win today, guys? We want to know. Hashtag Eurosport Cycling. Let's get your predictions coming in. Questions for Sean still, remember, to @RobHatchTV. Do our best to answer those as we get into the very, very exciting point of today's stage. The first big moment of the Giro is approaching. It really does take off here. And look at this. Svein Tuft back riding again. Real kudos to him. He was our first Maglia Rosa of this Giro. He's riding with broken bones and real problems, the Canadian, toughing it out at the front. But, Sean, it's key because it's the first time we've seen the pink jersey team riding today.
Yes, it is the first time, and it's surprising to see him riding at this point, because they haven't, contributed at all, and we all know why. Because with this difficult final of the stage, Michael Matthews have said it's just a bit too difficult for him to hold on today. But at the change of mind, it's an interesting one. But they are controlling with a number of riders in the front here at the moment. I suppose to get him onto the climb, you have to try and keep Michael Matthews in the pink jersey, keep him in a good position here, set him onto the climb as comfortable as possible, and then see what he can do for the rest of the stage.
Maybe he's feeling better as the afternoon goes on. There he is in pink. Again, most people, even he, was saying it will be his last day in pink today. Finally, he gets a sunny day to show off all that pink bling. Playing Matthews. Bling, his nickname, of course. In fact, all around the race they've been talking about his earrings and his bangles. It's his racing that's really lit things up thus far. 53 Ks to go.